Yep, it's about right.
That is warm.
Ja, it's lekker warm, but dis nie ons sin, jy weet. What can I tell you?
Okay, we're gonna have fun. I think people need inspiration, and like Rabbi said, they need to recognize opportunity. A lot of people that I know have lost their businesses. They are starting out again. We've got so bad in South Africa that we've got people calling us for money, you know?
No, it's very rough. Look, it's rough on multiple levels. But also South Africa, remember, you know, you're about 2.5, 3 months behind, you know, the initial first wave.
Guys, I think we're starting now.
Okay, starting now.
Okay. You see that the attendants, the participants are here. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another webinar, a very great webinar. We have Kibi Bernard all the way from Florida, being interviewed by none other than Ilana Africa. I want to thank you both for doing it. Without further ado, Ilana Africa.
Thank you so much, Rabbi, for this opportunity. I must tell you, in this space, we've had an interesting conversation the last time. And I must say, Kibi, when I asked people about you, they said many, many good things about what you do as a speaker in your business, and even about your father. And so I want to say it's an honor to meet you tonight, even be it through our Zoom and webinar tonight. I know that in Florida, it's a hot 30 degrees, whereas here in South Africa, I mean, I've got the kachelvuur, I've got the fireplace burning because we are freezing, we are cold. But you know what else is happening, Kibi? We are cold with frustration, and some of us are really sad and affected by lockdown and COVID-19, and people are experiencing it differently. And when I knew that I would have the opportunity to chat to you tonight about the hunt for normal, I realized, there is hope. And so we want to unpack that tonight in the short space of time that we have. Also, you will have an opportunity to ask some questions. Kibi is live with us, so without further ado, our desperate need to return to the global economy we knew and loved. And Kibi, I almost want to say that it might be an economy that's not the one that we knew, but that's going to be a lot different and better. The question is when?
Right. Ilana, first of all, thank you so much. And it's truly my honor and my privilege to be with you and the incredible work that Rabbi Masinta does through the Chabad organization in South Africa. And may this, in fact, be a merit for my father, and may his soul ascend on high. The title actually provokes a very fascinating question, and that is, you know, should we, in fact, be returning to the economy that we knew and loved? Was it in fact fundamentally healthy? Is this perhaps not a paradigmic opportunity to kind of revisit fundamental issues that we all intuitively and instinctively knew were desperately unhealthy, but we had no choice but to continue on that hamster wheel because of the demand of the churn of our responsibility, commitments, and economy? This is something that's very fascinating, because Leopardology speaks to this. See, we all seek clarity desperately, but what we spend very little time doing is actually making ourselves a vessel for clarity. Because clarity is actually in the domain of God. Our opportunity is to make ourselves the ultimate vessel to receive clarity, to have direction, to have a clear sense that you're building a business, an organization on terra firma, that you're actually building on solid ground, that there is a trajectory forward for you. You think there is, but perhaps there's not. Now, we spend a lot of time there, but not much time with, you know, what am I doing about self to receive and to be a vessel for clarity?
You've said a few things that creates themes for lockdown. We in South Africa have had a lot of time to spend on our own. You either revisited your relationship with God, or you turned away, or people have either made money or they have lost money. And in a time like this, when you said the word leopardology, it reminded me of a video, well, many of the videos that I've watched, where people commend you on this notion of leopardology. Now, apart from the fact that we both South Africa, even though you're sitting in 30 degrees and I'm sitting in -2, okay? Let's quickly talk about leopardology, because I have a few questions based on what you've just said. Leopardology, let's call it the hunt for clarity.
Right. So one of the things we touch on in leopardology, and this is a phenomenon, by the way, that all good South Africans have experienced in the bush. You're cruising along, it's a lekker day, it's mos lelig over there, and you've got your boeries, and you've got your drive horse, and you've got your biltong, and you're sitting there, and you gaan maar aan, and you're just in the bush, and it's gorgeous, glorious South Africa. And all of a sudden, it starts to plugge, okay? I'm talking about a rainstorm comes down and literally changes the entire equation.
Yeah.
This is a common phenomena in the bush. You see, this is something that we are actually just experiencing now, our generation, for the very first time. This pandemic that has descended upon us, this entire event of Corona and this COVID-19 event that has really gripped the world, is actually the first time that many of us in our generation are experiencing a fundamental uprootment from the firm sort of hold that we had on goals, on vision, on purpose, on meaning, on value. And it has literally fundamentally come to uproot it. In the bush, this is virtually a daily and a regular event. And there's a beautiful thing to observe in the bush that you don't often get to observe in the boardroom. And that is this accepting notion that change is actually the consistency. So what happens is you're a warthog unit that has spent literally the last 6 days busy burrowing out an extensive, by the way, awfully complicated tunnel network for your burrow. Along comes one of these classic South African rainstorms, like, you know, you see Fairfield Zimvula. I'm talking about, you know, one of those, right? And it absolutely wipes the place out. You stick your head out of there, everything around you has changed. Everything. All the norms and the fundaments that you took to be consistent in yesterday's hunt are no longer viable. There's water where it doesn't belong. There's flooding where it doesn't belong. There are trees that are down that you counted on for cover. There are places you can no longer gain access to. There is an immediate requirement for a recalculation, a recalibration. And this is a critical aspect of where we are right now. And so what we need to do, Ilana, is kind of just develop a relationship with this. As tragic, by the way, people have died. I mean, people close to us have died, have been taken out. Equations have changed. Family empires have come crashing down. Economies, personal economies, that people trusted and counted on are no longer viable and stable. Businesses that people literally 6, 7, 8, 9 weeks ago were on a massive trajectory are just no longer there.
Yeah.
This is like serious fundamental change. But what if I proposed to you, if I said to you that inherent in the chaos of the change is actually the seed of the blessing that will bring you to new ground, to new space, to places of innovation you never thought to go because you didn't have to. And in the bush, this is something that happens like this. We have to actually adopt this attitude cognitively.
The thing with that, though, is that some will survive and others won't. Because let's face it, in the bush, we understand rain. We don't know how severe it will be, right?
That's correct.
But here comes something that we completely don't understand. And immediately I want to say, maybe this is not the time for answers, but maybe it's the time that we start asking questions. And if you just joined in and you're a business owner, oh boy, I think you need to stay with us because you're going to get some answers tonight. Kibi Bernard is joining us on this very, very special evening put together by Rabbi Masinta and Chabad. And we're having some interesting conversations about leopardology and also predatory thinking, if I can put it that way. What are some of the questions that we need to ask in business and in commerce if we want clarity in the world today, keeping in mind that our world today is a world with COVID-19.
Yes. So I just want to pick up on something you said, Ilana. Some will survive, some won't. That was true 6 weeks ago, 6 months ago, 6 years ago, 600 years ago.
Yeah.
Some will survive, some won't. That is actually, it is a fundament of this thing we call a global economy. What we've done is we've swept it under the rug and we've kind of just lived in one of the two spaces. We're in a new place now, where instability is actually our new friend. So therefore, this takes us to what do I do with that? I really sharpen my sword. I become less fixated on my brand presence, on my anchoring in of service provision, my supply chain, sort of cemented supply chain relationship. And I start to develop and tweak elements about me that were totally asleep a few weeks ago. Agility, flexibility, an armor about me that says, it sal my goed vat en trek. I'm moving on. Okay,
Yeah.
this burrows down, I'm in that tree. I'm here, I'm there. Flexibility, agility, the ability to move. We build banking relationships. Here's a classic. By the way, this belongs to the realm of Fortune 5 and 1000 and corporate giants and to the early starting emerging entrepreneur. We build banking relationships because we think that's where the funnel lies for funding. But then we're locked in. And when that dies, it dies. What if I had agility? What if I had a whole different relationship with liquidity, with fluidity in my business of both cash, ideas, and service provision? So this whole element now becomes a whole space of activity for me that I'm now kind of reconnecting with that I didn't previously.
Mm-hmm. How do we practice leopardology to that? Because it sounds like there's a lot of adaptation. There's a lot of things that we're going to need to change about self and our environment. I love how you say you go to the one side and you realize that's not the solution. You then have to find another solution. How do we adapt to that kind of change if we don't even have clarity? Or how do we find clarity if we don't even have that kind of change?
It's a great question, Ilana. The trick lies in positive predatory pillar number 2. What is it that I'm keeping alive? You see, I want to share something with you about leopard. Leopard have an instinctive, in zoological literature, they just refer to it as a keen instinctive sense of self. It's actually a phenomenon that they will spend 30 to 40% of their daylight time grooming themselves. They have this enormously powerful tongue that has tiny little nodules that have a lot of sensory activity on them. And they'll spend 30 to 40% of their daylight hours doing nothing but actually grooming themselves. So people in early zoology, they used to think that it was actually about maintaining their coat, from parasitic involvement.
Yeah.
It's actually been understood that it is a continual sense of studying, tooling, and apparatus. What is available to them? Here is this organization of massive musculature, of design, precise divine design engineering. How do I mobilize this thing to the market begins with what is it that I have to mobilize to the market. And so what actually happens is that we now start to, you see, what is it that we're elevating? And many of us are elevating our brands, our products, our service. What you need to start elevating is your sense of self. This is not a bias. This is not an opportunity to now take yourself and egotistically walk through the world. It is a keen understanding that you are an individual that has particular tooling and apparatus. You are not a duplicate of something that God stamped out in a human manufacturing machine in heaven. You are a particular human being constructed in a very specific way. And by the way, if you had no purpose and meaning in the world, you would no longer be here. There's a natural cleaning instinct that God put in the world. You're here. You are at the table. You have oxygen in your lungs. There is particular purpose for that. You need to tap into that and spend more time. So what's going to happen is that what you do does not become the thing that defines you. It delivers you to the world, but it doesn't define you.
That's a shift, I think, that we all would need to get used to. The fact that you are delivered. And I'm just paying attention to the fact that you mentioned consumers. You know, immediately I think, okay, choosers, not consumers. This is something that you often quoted saying, right? Isn't our entire global economy built on consumers consuming products?
It absolutely is. And a new phenomena has now set into the world. February, March, April, June of 2020 will be the benchmark for a fundamental shift that comes into macroeconomics. You'll read about this in textbooks in time to come. And that is a shift of value consumption. Everyone's been nipping at the heels at it. You know, the millennials actually drove this in terms of what it is that they consume has to have an intrinsic value message. Now, by the way, you and I can spend a lot of time arguing whether some of those messages are valid, viable, or reasonable. But nonetheless, if you want to pump out to a mass millennial market today, you need to have a value proposition that precedes pricing. What this has done is it has caused all of us, Ilana, to sit back and actually take inventory of what our values are. You know, this quarantining at home business is a very, very interesting thing that has happened.
Yeah.
Because we revisited territory that was actually unfamiliar to a lot of us. We found nooks and crannies and spaces of value in our homes that we actually never knew existed because we were so busy making the world out there our home, and our homes were actually our houses where we just transacted sleeping and living.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden we've reversed that now. And now all sorts of value is speaking to us. We're going to have a whole different relationship with what's important. What do I need? What do I want? Are my wants and my needs confused? Because you do know another fundament of leopardology is that everything you need, you have. If you don't have it, you don't need it. Leopard instinctively understand this.
Didn't we realize that? So, I mean, you're in Florida, right? But here in South Africa, we had lockdown and we only had access to some things. And still, we only have limits to, we limited to a lot of things. And I don't want to get the smokers going right now. But if you tuned in right now, the hunt for our normal, for clarity, the hunt for excellence, for money, for sanity. I look at my home, and when you said the word home, it triggered me immediately. By the way, seeing that you are tuned in, soon we'll open the floor for questions, and you're welcome to already type them. I'll facilitate them, and Kiwi will be here to answer them. This quarantine and lockdown home, okay, so I want to unpack that. I want to talk a little bit more about that. What a paradigm shift. I love the fact that you say, you know, it used to be the place that you come home to where you make a meal. Friday nights was the only time that everyone's sitting at the table for Shabbat dinner, and that was it. The rest of the time we scattered, people on devices. We don't know when the birthdays were. We missed certain things. You know, there's a lot that we missed out in terms of the house and the home. Broader implications. Tell me more.
Right. It's a very interesting thing. We were very, very comfortable calling the world our recreation space and our workspace, our offices, our suites, our places of financial and commercial engagement was very familiar to us. It was actually home to us.
Yeah.
Called that home. Getting on an airplane, you know, twice, 3 times a month, flying overseas, coming back 2 days later. This is home. You do this in your sleep.
Mm.
What's actually going on in the house, you have no idea about. Issues with your kids, landmark issues with the family, birthdays, this, that, the other, actual discussion, actual conversation, actual thoughts, hopes, desires, wants, we had no idea about. And that's because home was where I was familiar and comfortable, and that lived outside of the parameters of the 4 walls of my house. It's a very interesting thing God did. He sent us into the home. And it's not quarantine at home, at house, it's quarantine at home. You know, stay home and quarantine. I want you to become familiar with core value, primordial value, the things that actually drive you, because we literally lost track of that. We literally had it upside down. We were chasing the things that are secondary to our primary values, but we made them dominant. We made them primary. And the entire world has needed a whole shift as to actually what's primary drive and what's secondary. And I really have a strong sense that we will emerge from this with a whole revisited sense of primordial value.
Let's talk to business, and I like how, I mean, you travel a lot, and you travel to Europe, and I know that recently you've engaged yourself in a petrochemical project, and it allows you to travel, and I want to say it allows us to travel, which is a privilege, because now we are without travel. So the first question I want to know is, did it affect your business? So can we say that COVID has affected your business specifically? The other thing that I want to know is our economy and our future. What do you think it will look like?
So Ilana, to speak to your first question, I mean, personally, in our business, in fact, we had a very productive 3 months because we were involved in a very heavy engineering R&D phase in our business. So actually, what happened was we got a lot of time allocation from engineers and sort of engineering consultants that we otherwise would not have. Typically, we would have had to share them with other projects that they're busy with. A lot of that came off the table, and we kind of just doubled down on time, and we were able to do that remotely. What it did was it created logistical complication for us, like it did for everyone. But we're very blessed as well that we're not in commercial phase yet. We're still in R&D, so this has been a big blessing to us. And but really, to move on to the bigger issue that you're asking, what does it look like here, and what does it emerge into? And what I've done, just for my own consumption, because it has to be very relevant to my world, I've really nailed it down into three things. The first we touched on. I don't believe you're going to be able to come to the world now with just a consumption of yesterday. If you are Rolex, watch brand, if you are, any one of the major luxury stores, and by the way, we've seen that here. Saks Fifth Avenue have filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy.
Yeah.
If you're coming to the world with, I want you to consume luxury for the sake of status acquisition, you've got a problem, because that's no longer a primary value that we actually live for. I really don't care what car you're driving. I really don't care what clothes you're wearing. I don't care what you're wearing. I'm trying to stay alive here. I'm trying not to, get COVID. That's what I'm busy with. And by the way, that psyche is going to trickle down into me for a long time. The second thing is that some very healthy social constructs are going to emerge, which is actually going to take us to much more finessed and cleaner business. We don't need to be touching each other the way we have been. We don't need to be entering intimate physical space with each other that we have no business being in, which confuses the lines of what we sell and what we buy.
Yeah.
We are going to now kind of revisit this notion of self-proprietary, which is what I simply just referred to in my own conversation. A sense of the individual is an entity of self and construct, has a function to be part and parcel of a global community, but also has a responsibility to self as an independent signature to put in the world. And what that's going to do is it's going to take us to business pursuit that brings the individual a voice. I want to be part and parcel of things that allow me to deliver myself to the world. Don't just get me swept up in a cubicle somewhere where I'm faceless, voiceless, unknown. I need to be something that can be delivering of who I am in my essence to the world. These are the things I'm going to pursue. And the third thing is that this is all going to take us to a place, and this was a desperate shift that was needed. Businesses and individuals within them are going to now loathe and run from mediocrity. Mediocrity lived for a very long time, particularly here in the United States, in all sorts of ways and spaces. And it got a free pass, Ilana. It got a free pass. It's done. First of all, it's going to come from within, and second of all, organizations are no longer going to have the latitude to offer mediocre. If you do not return calls, if you don't actually communicate and speak to people in a meaningful and significant way, you will die a death of non-consumption. You will literally die to corona. Because what's happened is, as you and I have sat in quarantine and emerged, we have revisited our internal drive, and it's pulling out the excellence within me. It's actually going to step me further. I'm digging deep to find entrepreneurial energy to get out there and hunt. A lot of people just that have money just want to pack it up and say, listen, shalom, leave me alone, I'm done, I did my thing, I'm sitting on the beach now.
Yeah.
Actually, we're going to dig deep and we're going to come out bigger, better, stronger. You're going to see less resource and more human. We traded on human resource. We're now going to have more resource, less, more human, more resource is going to come to the market. It's going to be about what I can bring to the market and what I as an organization can bleed through. These are going to be the key changes that you're going to see. You have to sit at meetings with value. Don't come there as a stick. It's not going to happen.
Before, because I have a question around the boardroom and how to, because, you know, we've got strategists that are logging on tonight, so we need to plan. But first I want to ask a really practical question. In terms of leopardology, is there a time where the leopard fails itself by not knowing what to do or where to go next? Like, how do you recover? I'm thinking of people who are tuning in tonight and they are experiencing their curse and they are unable to make that shift from curse to make it something good, or the opportunity, and seeing this curse as an opportunity to change or to be better.
It's a very valid point you bring. You know, leopard are solitary hunters. They hunt alone. The single biggest competitor are lion pride. Lion pride are massive. You know, 9, 13, 18, 21, 29 in a pride. These are massive corporate conglomerates. You want to go into the coffee business. You have a passion, Ilana, for coffee. And apparently the word on the street is you brew a coffee like no one else does. And there's so much love and passion in there. But you look out the window, you see Starbucks, you see Caribou. You're like, these are lion prides, man. These are lion prides. I'm going to go start up with an organization that has a footprint of 1,690 stores throughout the country with a branded presence that's 20 years old. And you're coming with your Ilana Africa brewed cup of coffee, which is magnificent and beats them all hands down. But that's your passion. Yeah. How do you do this? You know what the irony is? Leopard actually closed 76% of all attempted client contact. Lion, these massive, huge corporate conglomerates, only close about 48 to 50% of all attempted client contacts. And by the way, it's an enormously inefficient client contact. They leave a lot of profit on the table all over the place. Hyena get a hold of it, and jack will get a hold of it, and other predators come in for a little bit of a dip here and there, leopard-head vultures. Leopard are the most prolific apex predator. They are the most successful feline predator because of the total wholesome engagement of the client contact. They close that client, they fully close the client. It is an absolute total engagement where self is delivered, and then they bring it into an environment that totally represents themselves. Simple. They put that thing up in the tree where only they have access to it, and they fully engage it for maximum profit retention. See, this is what needs to emerge. This is what's going to happen with us. I understand that we have literally had a massive shift here. We've been whacked. This is a serious whack. But what I'm also saying to you is that there is huge opportunity within this for businesses to look, explore, flirt with, engage avenues and aspects that typically would not have been on their radar, that they now find that they have a home for, and they can bring that into their home, their methodology, their operating methodology, and they can emerge with opportunities that they never before thought would have been relevant. It takes an instinctive courage from within of self, of who you are and what you are, what your capabilities are. And to know you walk this world with precision. You're a divine creation of the Almighty, and God does not make junk.
Wow. God does not make junk. You heard that?
No.
This is amazing. I'm intrigued by the fact that you're talking about, let's call them franchises, and then the sole proprietor, the individual that, and I can see it amongst our friends and colleagues that the businesses that got hurt the most during COVID are the bigger than, what do you call them, macros. Before we talk about that, I want to talk about Bush to the boardroom, because this is something that I'm passionate about. The concept of hunting the market that you are given, right? Not the one that you want.
Right. Fundament of leopardology. Hunt the market you're given, not the one you want. What's happening with all of us right now, and this is across the globe, we're all waking up and saying, what we South Africans call ach.
Yeah.
Yeah. Eino, you know, what was is no longer. I had it, we were there, we were this, that, the other. You know, things have fundamentally changed. And we are lamenting history. And, you know, to go and find the courage now to kind of re-engage, etc., right, takes a lot of steam. There's one of the reasons Leopard are so successful is that in destruction of environment, which is specifically related to water, when water dries up. So of the three categories, lion, leopard, cheetah, your three primary African cats, leopard approximately have about a 30% head start before lion and cheetah kind of get with the program. Guys, there's no more water here. It's time to move on. We've got to adjust. We need to make an adjustment here. We have to do something that's going to change outcome, because I cannot do what I did yesterday. It's a different hunt. So Ilana, it's a very simple thing. If I take yesterday's hunting methodology and I apply it to today's hunt, I'm history. I need to hunt the market I'm given, not the one I want. And it's a discipline, by the way, and it's a courage. You just have to dig deep. And you have to know that if this is what's on your plate, this is divinely on your plate, you have the tooling, you have the apparatus, you have the ability, do so. Do so with passion, energy, and prayer. You know, Mr. Mark Markovits, who's well known to many people in South Africa, was from the, you know, Landmark, who's an incredible human being. He is a mentor of mine and has been for 40 years. And Uncle Mark, who lives in Killarney, may he live well and be well, he always used to say to me, two things you need, prayer and energy.
Yep. Passion and prayer and energy, and then also the macro trends. I want to quickly, I'm going to ask the last question and then I'm going to go to your Q&A. So Mary Ann, I see you. We're going to get to your question shortly. You talked about macro trends, and immediately I'm thinking of the individual entrepreneur. Earlier I mentioned sole proprietor, small startup. How do we emerge?
Right. So first of all, what you know, as a macro trend, by the way, you're going to see OPEX, you're going to see infrastructure OPEX literally dissolve. Yeah. You're going to see these huge office buildings that PwC has 6 floors in the Chicago complex. They just gave back 3 of them. You're going to have this whole notion of remote exchange and remote working is actually going to become something that is now set into the economy and is really actually going to finesse. You know, platforms like these are going to just become more and more effective. What this does is if you think about it, is it actually levels the playing field for the entrepreneur, the single solo operator sitting in his garage that used to not have competitive edge against the PwCs, the KPMGs, because he didn't have the infrastructure. Infrastructure is now going to play much less of a business card and a currency to business engagement than it used to. This is going to bring a tremendous amount of advantage to those that have genuine bona fide offering but never got a voice before. So this is one thing. And the whole idea, by the way, of not being anchored down to a bookkeeper, to an accountant, to an engineer that doesn't live within Miami that I want to employ and I want to engage, but the guy sitting in Chicago is now something I have much more comfort with because it's part of my new world. This is going to bring a lot of opportunity to the entrepreneur. This is one thing. The other thing that's very, very important is that now you get heard. You get heard by seeking buyers such as, you know, myself, yourself, people that are seeking buyers of your services that previously wouldn't because your infrastructure was in other words, was your play card. Now actually I'm open to buy your service. And this is going to, so not only can you deliver it, I'm actually willing to buy it in a way that I wasn't before. Very important key change.
Yeah. I'm excited to hear that because I've seen those trends in my own business. I have 6 team members and 4 of them I've never met. Right. And that's just how we've all run our business, through trust and through prayer and passion. Yeah. And
I mean, one of the biggest areas, Ilana, is this telemed. It's very fascinating.
Yeah.
You know, it's something that was gaining traction beforehand, but it is now, and there's actually indication that telemed, particularly in certain disciplines that are, you know, part clinical, part diagnostic, telemed is going to become, it was kind of a 595 story to the market. It has shifted over the last 3 months to a 2080. They expect that to actually reach a 50-50, 50% telemed, 50% clinic in-house, you know, visit with the doctor by September 2020. That's a game changer. Doctors are hating it, but it's a game changer.
We've got one comment from Mary Ann. She says she's just did her yoga practice on Zoom. She says what Kibby Bernard is saying has made, she says it's true. The world has become, outside has become our home, you know, so she's running her business from home. She also says it would be interesting to see a world that is primarily masculine, but that needs a bit of feminine. She says not necessarily more women, but more nurturing. So she's speaking to almost an empathy aspect of, which is, I guess it's another layer to emotions and understanding people during this time, you know. If you're more emotional.
She's got the right guy. I've got 5 sisters and 4 daughters. So I've got a lot of women in my life and I value each one of them.
I have 100 more questions, but I know we're running out of time. Let me choose one of my 100. 2020 has become a year where some wants to write it off. Others wants to say, well, you know, what a terrible year this has been on the calendar, you know. We're happy to welcome Rosh Hashanah again because look at what has happened, you know, in this year. So I want to speak to this. It's become a year in contemporary history where God reclaims his territory. Earlier, you mentioned a little bit about that, and I'd like to give you an opportunity to just speak to that. We need encouragement. We need an opportunity to recognize change and the fact that there is opportunity in change, which you have spoken to tonight. I think also we need an opportunity to understand that this curse can be a blessing and that it can be used for good. The same that you have established that when we return to our home, we will understand our values again. And we will have time for our family again and be able to spend time with self and soul search, like Mary Ann has been speaking about empathy, that we'll be understanding basic feelings again so that we can reset.
Ilana, I would just say to you in closing that I think that, you know, man is a phenomenal creation of God. And when you think about it, is the only creation that God created that has the capacity and the ability to entirely and totally contradict him. It's a phenomenon. And it's, by the way, one of the great, actually the Kabbalistic sources record this as one of the greatest accomplishments of God's creation, is that he created man, because it has the capacity to entirely contradict and deny him, which is something it takes a great creator to do. We have done so successfully, and we have such capacity to actually block God out of our lives, that we literally have seen ourselves over the last 20, 30, 50 years emerge into a finessed modern construct that not only did not have a need for, but did not have a want and a desire for, and in fact lauded the absence of the notion that there is a higher order, there is a transcendent living to be done, that you are actually a mechanism of delivery for light in the world. What you do does not define you, as we've discussed. It is an opportunity for you to deliver transcendency and to live a transcendent life in the world. And yes, you need to pursue things with tremendous gusto and passion and you know, opportunity and finesse. And you really need to give your proclivities and your intellectual capacity, you know, the full attention to the thing you're dealing with. Because it's divine, because you're doing God's work, not because it is a thing in and of itself. And we totally lost that. We literally have come unglued. We lost it. We lost the plot, as we like to say in South Africa. What this has done is it has totally reset it. God needed a hard reset, a hard reset. And by the way, that's why he used a biological element that you cannot see, touch, hear, know. It's something that is not of supernatural world. It's something of our world that we have absolutely no management over. And you see the chaos around it. Are mosques a good thing, a bad thing? Touching is a good thing, it's a bad thing, it's a good thing. Do this today, do that tomorrow. No one has a clue as to what does work, doesn't work. Social distancing, 6 foot, 8 foot, 4 foot, 10 foot. No one's actually quite sure what the program is, but we know that we kind of need to just traverse this thing. So what happens here is that we will kind of, we went into lockdown. The world locked down man so that it could unlock God. And what that is different things to different people, but it is a sense that I am something greater than my success, than my ability, than my capacity to just fill a bank account, have banners all over town and billboards, be known, be heard, be famous, be made aware of. I am beyond that. I am something that transcends that. I'm a physical being, but I am of spiritual capacity, and I can connect heaven and earth seamlessly. And we are all revisiting with this. By the way, even the atheists, for whatever they call a transcendent living, there's something about my human spirit that says I have the capacity for more than just bank accounts and money.
Yeah.
And we're touching this now. We're touching the raw nerve of it. And so this lockdown has really unleashed within us a tremendous, tremendous capacity and an opportunity to really get a hold of this. And this is a tremendous blessing, because we were so absolutely clouded over by, the material and the physical parameters of our lives that we literally lost the plot. And so I'm just saying to you in closing that the silver cloud, the silver lining, is the cloud itself. There's a deep, dark doom cloud of instability, a lack of sense of security, financial insecurity, social insecurity. And we have no idea how all this emerges. What we do know is that this is a divine moment. This is a particular moment in history. We do know that we are not defined by physical parameters. We live for something transcendent. And we know that the same God that created that will create the solution. It's about agility. It's about just living with it. Let the rain be a blessing, not a curse.
Kivi, let the rain be a blessing, wow, and not a curse. Just had another comment saying, how do we get hold of this recording? Well, we are live on Facebook as well, so you can share it to all your friends. And also, if you want to hear Kivi Burnett speak, what you do is you type in his name in Google, you find the most amazing resources. I'm telling you, he's been all over the world. He might sit in 30 degrees now while we're all freezing, but what a chat. We really appreciate your time, and thank you so, so much. So many insights, passion and prayer. It's definitely something that I'm going to build my business on. And tonight, I thank God that I'm home. And I don't know, for tonight, I'm glad we have lockdown because I get to spend it with my family. May there be a massive blessing on your business and in the lives of your family. And during this interesting time, may you stay healthy. It's been wonderful chatting. Kivi, you need to say goodbye now because I can see Rabbi Masinta knocking on the door, literally. He's like Zoom knocking, okay?
Donna Mawana, thank you so much. And thank you to Rabbi Masintas and Chabad. Thanks for the opportunity, guys.
Guys, thank you. And Kivi, thank you. And Ilana, thank you. Kivi, you were inspiring, and we all got to use every bit of our talents now to inspire people, to make people think. And Ilana, you thank you for this outstanding interview. I just want to mention that on Sunday night, we have live from Russia, Rabbi Beryl Lazar at 7 p.m. Rabbi Beryl Lazar has been in Russia since 1990, and he single-handedly has transformed Russian Jewry. So it's certainly not to be missed. But thank you all for coming, and have a good evening.
Thank you.